Thank you for joining us this morning to discuss how our industry will be accountable for improving its diversity, equality and inclusion. It's a big topic to cover in the time that we have this morning, but it is necessary, and I believe that we can achieve more by having a collaborative discussion. My name is Laura Sutherland, and today I am accompanied by Rax Lakani, who will be conducting the panel session in a short while. Just to give you a little bit of information about me, if you don't know me already, my name is Laura Sutherland, as I said. I founded my consultancy, Aura PR, in 2008, so in the last recession. I founded PRFest in 2015 with the inaugural event taking place in 2016, and it's now made up of over 500 senior PR and communication professionals across the world. I call myself an industry ambassador because I've had many roles within the industry volunteering for over 11 years now, and I'm very passionate about helping shape the future of the industry and helping the younger generation navigate through. I've held the board position for the CIPR for a number of years, and I was also a council member, and I currently chair the CIPR's Fellows Forum and also chair the PRCA in Scotland, and I'm a member of its council. In 2017, I shaped the volunteer strategy for the CIPR, which basically led to the evolution of a social networking platform for the 400+ volunteers around the country to collaborate and have discussions on. And then earlier in this year, just after lockdown, we launched the Progress Mentoring Scheme for the CIPR, and that was through my work with the Fellows Forum. Before we move on to the panel, I'm proud to be able to launch the Driven Pledge, something I've been working on since June. The Driven Pledge is the result of a 2-month-long initiative and consultation, and it's a free, easy-to-use tool, so it's accessible for industry leaders and individuals to start making positive changes to your approach to diversity and inclusion. The challenge we have in the industry is not for one person or one organisation to solve. We're all in this together, and we need to collaborate and a collaborative approach to have long-term change. The Driven Pledge isn't a silver bullet, but it is a starting point for many. Thank you to everyone who participated in the original Driven framework at PRFest in June, and to those people who have given me feedback and participated over the last month or so and supported my ambition for this project so far. I believe the momentum that we have right now is great enough for us to continue to progress, but we all need to commit to action, professionalism, and present leadership. This is the introduction slide to the pledge. You'll see it outlines diversity, representation, inclusion, validation, equality, and network. The drive part of Driven was originally Rax Lakani's pillars that he had developed, and we've used this to create a wider network, wider framework rather, for people to follow. And basically the introduction is just encouraging people to work with teams and stakeholders, staff, etc., to discuss how you're going to change and why you're going to change, and then how that explanation is going to be filtered externally as well. It's really important to have everyone involved in this process so that it's properly embedded within your agency or your organisation. And here you'll be able to see the actual pillars. This is what came out of the PRFest session in June, and this is what we've described as the roadmap. This is obviously available for download at 11:30 today after the event, and I'll share the link shortly. And then the next page is where you would fill in your goals, essentially. So your goals, your deadlines, the actions, and the people involved, and they're your pledges. You're free to take that template if you want and do what you want with it, but obviously it's there and designed like that just so that it's easy to use, easy to refer to, and obviously everything fits back into the original pillars as well. The important thing I would say is that what you do after this is important. So you would share it. So write your pledges and share them publicly. Share with the team, share with the clients and other stakeholders, telling them the why. This is really important. And then add it to your website so that your stakeholders can hold you to account. You know, if you're being transparent and everything is on your website, and you're sharing all this content in your emails and your newsletters and everything, then you're going to be held to account, obviously, but you're more than likely going to follow through and take action rather than just pay lip service. And obviously there might be elements of learning involved in it. There might be training required. So I would urge you to look at your CPD plans for the year, and plan accordingly, but also to record your CPD and your learnings. And also share your learnings wider as well, because I think one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that if we can learn how other people have gone about learning in developments or the hard way even, or how not to do something, then it's better to be able to share that so that we can understand as a community how we can move forward and progress. And then reporting. So annual reporting is something that I've suggested, and we'll come on to talk about that in the panel session very shortly. And then inspiring. I really believe that we have to inspire others to follow our example. So that comes back to leadership, it comes back to values, purpose, and it comes back to really setting that example for other people to follow. So I'm now going to hand over to my good colleague Rax Lacani, who is going to conduct the panel session. And on you go, Rax.
Great. So I'm going to just jump right in here because I know time is short and I'm sure everyone wants to kind of hear from the panel rather than myself. So I'm just going to kick things off with it's a question to all three organisations represented here today. Just to kind of give us a bit of a summary on what you're currently doing within the realm of diversity and inclusion, and just to let all the attendees know a bit more about kind of the work that has gone on, what that's going on now, and what's being planned, I guess, in the coming months and years. So, Melissa, it'd be really great to maybe start off with Taylor Bennett Foundation. I think everyone here knows of the work, some more intimately than others. What do you guys do? What do you and your team do? Yeah, over to you.
Thank you. So, as you know, my name's Melissa Lawrence and I'm the Chief Executive of the Taylor Bennett Foundation. So the Taylor Bennett Foundation is a charity. We've been around for 12 years now. We were established in 2008 and I've been in post for just over a year and a half as Chief Exec. So the foundation was essentially set up to address the need for greater ethnic diversity within PR and comms. So we are very specific about what we do around D&I and ethnic diversity in particular. We work with lots of different agencies and in-house comms teams across different sectors and disciplines. And basically our programs are designed to I guess, to have employability as the end objective. So employers can get involved with us by taking part in our internship program. We have our flagship PR training program, which is the thing that we have always done from the very beginning, which, as I said, the objective is to get graduates into entry-level positions, junior positions. We have a mentoring program, and to, I guess, promote opportunities more widely and more broadly, we promote opportunities for the industry. So I guess those are all the sort of key things that we are doing around D&I. We do it very successfully, although on a small scale. So with our training programs, they only run 3 times a year for 6 graduates, although I'm very pleased to say that our next training program is for 9 graduates. But as I said, we're very successful in what we do. On average, 97% of graduates that go through our program do enter the industry straight away. And in 2018, we did a survey of our graduates and 62% of them were still in communications. So we, as I said, do very well, but there is more to do. And I think retention and progression seems to be the biggest issue. And we know that from, in particular, the latest CIPR Race in PR report. And behind the scenes, just to finish up, we are looking at that quite closely. And next year, we'll be launching a new program which specifically looks at our high potential alumni to encourage and help them to stay in the industry and to progress. That's me.
Brilliant. That's some really great stuff there, and I think I'm always kind of in awe of the stuff that you guys are doing. And every time I visit your website, there's even more and more stuff there. It's brilliant. Thank you so much, Melissa. Francis, over to you. At the PRCA, what's currently happening within diversity and inclusion? Anything to report on?
Thank you, Rax, and congratulations to yourself and Laura for putting this together. It's brilliant. If I take just a moment of perspective and then talk about what we're doing. So I've been running the PRCA for 12 years now, and before that I was at the CIPR. So 15 years of going to conferences and hearing and giving speeches, talking about the need to address this issue and the need for our industry to reflect the society that it works in. And while our society has become more diverse over those 15 years, our industry hasn't. And our data still says that 9 out of 10 people in the industry are white. And I think that lack of change hasn't been for any lack of will, it's just never got to the top of people's agenda. And now it has, and that's something that's very welcome. So we announced in June 4 measures ourselves to improve both how we work and the makeup of the industry. So there's a review of the diversity model of communications management standard. There's a decision to make it compulsory for all teams. It was previously an optional module. There's anyone undertaking our CPD program or a qualification has to do the diversity model as an integral part of it. We've reviewed the makeup of all of our panels and speaking events so it's truly representative of our society, not of our industry, but of our society. And we've established the Race and Ethnicity Equity Board. Now, their role is about holding us to account as an organisation and also helping us to champion racial diversity in the industry. So REEB, for its acronym, is a group of 12 volunteers chaired by Barbara Phillips. It's to effect long-term and immediate change within our industry. We've made it a standing committee of the PRCA, so it will always have an automatic seat on the PRCA board, and it reports directly to the chairman of the PRCA. Now, REEB's got a very good programme of initiatives that are working on, helping agencies and in-house teams address the ethnicity pay gap, updating our code of conduct. I know that's on the agenda for later on, to ensure it provides tighter definitions of race and ethnic discrimination. And finally, we looked at our own PRCA main board and realised that we hadn't reflected society. We hadn't even reflected our industry. We'd been so focused on ensuring we always had a gender balance, we'd forgotten about this other very important issue. So the immediate change we've made is 3 new members of the board, so Barbara Phillips, Rohan Shah and Cam Pearce, all with excellent perspectives on our industry. We've also said that ahead of our AGM in September, there'll be further changes to our board to make it truly reflective of society as it should be. Now, I don't think any of these changes are easy, particularly at a time of such disruption within economy, society, and our own business, but we're fully committed to making them happen. And I've said before, and I repeat now, if we don't make them happen, REEB will call us out, quite correctly. So will your diversity network, Rax. And I hope so will the wider industry. So we made these pledges, hold us to them. Thank you.
Brilliant, fantastic stuff. Alastair, Jenni, I think Alastair, can I put the question to you? And Jenni, if you've got anything to add, feel free to do so. What's the CIPR doing in the space of diversity and inclusion?
Sure, thank you. We've had a diversity and inclusion forum for a number of years, but that's really functioned as a kind of internal think tank to advise the CIPR board, and it hasn't really been like one of our full-fledged groups. So this year we are expanding it. We've put out an open call for people to get involved, and we've had a very enthusiastic response so far. So that group will be expanding its work into new areas with a much larger pool of volunteers to support it over the coming year and beyond that. We'll continue our long-standing support for the Taylor Bennett Foundation. And one of the big things we've done this year is publish our race and PR report that Melissa already alluded to, which was a bit of a shocker. It did point the finger very much in the direction of behaviour as being an issue, and something that's very clearly, or behaviours that are very clearly unprofessional conduct. So one of the things that we'll be emphasising is that some of the things which were highlighted in that report, which are to do with belittling, sidelining, taking credit for other people's work, getting people to train somebody else up and then getting rid of them. All of these kinds of things are very likely to be unprofessional behaviour. And interestingly, they also echo, we published another report 3 years ago on the experience of senior women in PR. And although the names are different, the individuals involved are different, the experiences are actually very similar. So I think we can say that there are some quite serious behavioural problems in some parts of our industry, and that's what we have to focus on. So the last thing that I wanted to mention is that we are very strongly supporting the new Blueprint accreditation from BME PR Pros. We will be encouraging all of our agency members to sign themselves up to that because it has an accreditation element to it. We ourselves are not yet eligible to become Blueprint accredited because at the moment it's only for agencies, but we will be starting to shadow the Blueprint standard so that when it becomes available in perhaps a year or so, we will ourselves seek that accreditation.
That's great. Some really great stuff there. I mean, I would maybe ask, you've all kind of done a lot in recent times on race and ethnicity, and a lot of what both organisations, and including Taylor Bennett Foundation, have been talking about is diversity through the lens of race and ethnicity. And whilst there are programs out there like Blueprint, and it's great to see REEB being set up at the PRCA, when we talk about wider codes of conduct, how do we ensure that we are also looking at diversity and inclusion from a broader perspective, building on great work that's been done by the LGBTQ plus community within our industry, groups that have been set up to address gender equity, the rights of disabled practitioners, etc. So on the topic of codes of conduct, we've already had answers alluding to the fact that they are being updated. Could you give us more details on the specifics of those codes of conduct and whether they'll be conditional for membership? Alastair or Jenni, I'll let you kind of delve into that. Where do you stand?
Jenni's taken herself off mute, so she...
Okay. Great.
I'll start and then you can finish.
Hi.
Hi. So the code of conduct, every member has to abide by the code of conduct. So you're held to account to that, and that's the same across any membership body. So, and in that code of conduct, it talks about treating everybody fairly. So I think for me, the biggest thing is about using that code of conduct and holding people to account. And that's what we don't do enough. And I know it's uncomfortable. And I know it's challenging sometimes to think this person isn't behaving in a way that I feel is in line with our code of conduct, and I feel strong enough to do something about it. That takes, vulnerability and courage to do that. But I think if we don't do that, then the code of conduct is almost pointless. So I think we do have to encourage members and non-members to hold people to account for the codes of conduct that exist. They are deliberately broad because they can't be for every different aspect of society, but ours talks about treating everybody fairly, and it talks about professional conduct, and they're two things that for me and the team and Alastair is incredibly important. But I'll let Alastair answer anything further on any specifics around that.
Not much to add really. Our code is deliberately brief and high level and principles based, so it doesn't try to capture every single possible thing that somebody might or might not do in a particular context. So members are required to act fairly towards colleagues, employees, clients, and everybody else. So certainly some of the conduct that was recorded in the Race and PR report does not meet that standard. Everybody in the CIPR, not only does everybody have to sign up to that code in order to become a member, they have to renew their commitment to it every year. So there's no question that that's what people are signed up to. The only question is, as Jenni says, are they sticking to it? And if not, who's going to do something about it?
Great. Francis, give us a bit more detail on the specifics of the updates to the code of conduct that you mentioned earlier.
Well, you talked about conditional. And again, it goes without saying, but I'll say it, all of our members are bound by our code of conduct at all times in everything that we do. And we take it very seriously. I mean, we expelled Bell Pottinger using the clauses about discrimination and about stirring up racial hatred. And that is the prime example that I can give of how seriously we take this and of the public consequences of breaking our code. So we're reviewing it at the moment with our diversity network and with REEB. As with the CIPR code, as with every code, it's principle based. It's about the public good and principles such as that, and telling the truth at heart and having respect for fellow colleagues. I want anyone to, and that review is ongoing and it'll conclude pretty quickly. I want everyone to realise that we have a whistleblowing mechanism within the code. You can make a complaint without being identified. We handle it confidentially via myself. And I would really encourage anyone who is being treated in a way that breaks our code by their colleagues, by anyone else within the industry, to contact us confidentially, and we will take it with the utmost severity and seriousness.
The question I have kind of for all of you, I think it's very clear that you have some plans for putting some stricter guidelines in place for members. What do we do about non-members? There are vast amounts of organisations out there. Can we do anything? Is it something under that we all collectively can call out? Or just beyond calling out, how do we ensure that as an industry as a whole, members or non-members, we can make sure that this is being seen as not optional? Is there anything we can do? Francis?
Well, look, the reality is it is optional, isn't it? Because people decide whether or not they want to be held accountable to the highest standards. And that is a sad reality. But it's incumbent upon in-house teams, colleagues, and people who are looking for agencies to ask, do you subscribe to a code of conduct? No, it doesn't have to be ours, it doesn't have to be the CIPR's. There are plenty of decent, robust codes of conduct out there. And it's important that people expect it as a minimum rather than as a gold standard. It must be the minimum expectation of working with PR practitioners. And just to go back for a moment to the code review we've got on at the moment, I mean, we're talking with REEB to also have something specifically about race in there. And I would encourage anyone in our industry, whether they're a member of ours or not, to look at our code and give us their views on it and how it could be improved, tightened up, made more specific, made broader as well. Because I think I want to hear from everyone within the industry, and then I want to encourage them to live by the highest principles and standards that other practitioners do.
Great. Melissa, have you got any thoughts on codes of conduct and what perhaps needs to be done, or what you think that the gaps are from an industry body perspective with regards to the work that Taylor Bennett Foundation does?
Oh, good question. I mean, for the foundation, we don't have an official code of conduct, and actually just hearing this conversation, I've made a note. I think we should actually have, you know, a written code of conduct for ourselves. We have obviously an unofficial one about how we expect our, you know, sort of candidate network to be treated when they are out there with, you know, in the sort of PR world, whether that's through our internship training or mentoring program. But for me, in terms of calling out bad practice, because I know, as I said, unofficially, sometimes the experiences of our young people is not, you know, whole. But for me, I wouldn't, we don't call out bad practice. We would just actually disengage with an organisation that does that. But thinking about, as I said, the membership bodies and what they do, I mean, I think it's great. And I guess it partly comes down to, again, accountability, how you are ensuring that those codes of conduct are being met, you know.
Yeah. I think some of the questions we've got, some of the discussions in the chat, and forgive me, I can't actually go through them all, but that's generally the tone that's coming through. Is it's great to see these being implemented, but I think we need to make sure accountability is there. You're absolutely right.
I think I saw there was a comment in the chat from someone who said they called out bad behaviour in the past, and they were reprimanded as a result. But obviously, Francis was speaking about, you know, the confidentiality of their whistleblowing line. But it is a thing to be aware of and conscious, because I think people do want to call things out, but it's about the consequences. But equally, you know, the accountability. This person has said it will still never stop them. They will do it.
Yeah. I mean, just reading through the CIPR's report on racism, which was a really painful, uncomfortable read, but so necessary. And you know, I applaud CIPR for that. I think in there, it just raised lots of issues about actually having the confidence to go and whistleblow and have these conversations when you're at the, you know, when you're experiencing some of these injustices yourself. I'd like to kind of move on to the area of training and learning. Now, for me, you know, I do a lot of work in the area, and I've seen probably one of the biggest challenges, in my view, is a misunderstanding, a lot of confusion about just the terminology and the breadth and the complexities around diversity and inclusion. And so as a result, overnight, we've got a whole myriad of training, one-off training solutions that have been made available to organisations in our field. Everything from unconscious bias training to active listening training to sessions that cover off from an HR perspective, some of the legal compliance under the Equalities Act. And I think that on one hand, they're to be welcomed, but there is a temptation for these to be seen as a sheep dipping exercise, a one-off kind of tick box done it. Whereas in my view and the view of many others, it needs to be continual and advancing and ever present. I'd like to ask the body representatives here, perhaps starting with Francis, how do we kind of make sure as a body that we are offering these training services? What do these training services look like? And you also kind of mentioned, you know, some of these might be compulsory. Have you got any more details to share with us on this, Francis?
Not might be compulsory, will be compulsory.
Okay, great.
So it will be compulsory to undertake our diversity modules for any of our qualifications that you're doing, or anyone who signed up to our CPD platform, which is thousands of people. And that's a significant change. And the CPD platform, you'll have to do it every year, of course. We're also embedding it in CMS across the whole host of the work there. And that will mean that if you want to use the business matching tool that CMS allows you to gain access to, you've got to do this, and you've got to embed it in everything that you do, and it's going to be rigorous. I think we've been too lax on it in the past, and that stops now. And there will be a lot more to come. We're talking with a whole range of trainers at the moment about providing a whole new raft of services to our members, and our expectation will be that people take them up and take them seriously. And you know, and the first challenge we will have on that is to our PRCA board for their directors to sign up themselves to it. And therefore you're talking about Ketchum and Fleischman and Webber and Golan and Portland and all these big names who I hope will set an example, take a lead. I really think we can effect change and make it permanent within the industry, and the enthusiasm I see from people around the industry, agency, in-house freelancer, the whole load of people, makes me very positive that this will be a lasting change and not just a sticking plaster.
I'll ask you just very quickly to follow up, Francis, if the PRCA itself is offering members any of its own training, so in terms of webinars or any advice that are available on an ongoing basis?
Yep, absolutely. And we're going to be increasing the number and the range of the training that we offer to members.
That's good to know. CIPR, yeah, Jenni, is this one that you could maybe shed some light on in terms of the training commitment that you kind of want to put onto members?
Yeah, it's come up a lot actually, and unsurprisingly, over the last kind of 3 months, I've had a lot of emails and conversations with members around the gaps and things that are missing, and the diversity and inclusion group that we've got, that Alastair mentioned, are doing a load of work in looking at what are the specific gaps that are needed. So much like Francis said, there is a need to have more training, but it's so broad, and I think that's the bit that can be challenging, because diversity and inclusion isn't just about race. There's lots of other factors in there, and we have to make sure that we're supporting practitioners and members across that entire breadth. A lot of that content exists, and a lot of that content is out there, but it's kind of gathering it together and putting it in a place that members can access, that's easy to use. So I think that's something that we can definitely start to look at. For me, it's also looking at, it's just really taking time to look at yourself. And I think as much as we could do a load of training on unconscious bias and confidence training and things like that, we have to look at ourselves as individuals and explore our own bias and our own awareness, and the things that we might think are the right thing to do might not be. So it's having a safe space to have those conversations and making sure that we're doing the things that aren't tokenism, that aren't things that just tick a box, but we're actually doing the stuff, as Francis said, for that long-term change. So I think there's a lot in there to look at. There's a need, as I said, for more training. There is a need for it to be broader than just race. And I know that's what Avril, who's leading our diversity and inclusion group, is looking at. I haven't caught up with Avril for a while as I've been away, but I'm very keen to let that group mold and shape and listen and come back to the centre with their ideas of what they think is needed. And while that might feel like it's taking a really long time, it's important that we get this right, and it does cover the breadth of what we need it to do, and we don't just have a sort of knee-jerk reaction to something that I know has been a long-term issue. But I think there's a lot going on around it that we need to make sure we do the right stuff, and we're not doing just a tick box exercise. And I think that would be the same for all the bodies at the moment.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear.
Rex, can I add something to that? Just that we've had, as others have said, training in this area has been around for a very long time. CIPR board has done it. Other boards have done it. Other organisations, have done it. I mean, it's not new stuff. It's been available, and many people have done it. Probably done it more than once. Overall, if you look at the figures that Francis alluded to at the beginning of this conversation, what we can see is definitively it's not working. So no matter how, all the training and all the unconscious bias awareness, all that, whatever it is, it may be working with individuals or small bits of organisations for a while, but overall, it's not really helping the sector improve its performance. So the thing that I particularly like about Driven is it focuses attention on what I think is the right area. So it's not a lack of skills that's the problem, it's to do with behaviour. And it's really a culture change that we need. And I think Driven is a very good place for starting to ask yourself the questions that will drive a culture change. So, what may come out, once you ask yourself those questions and you try to set yourself those goals, you may well identify that you do need some training, and that's good. And we will certainly be helpful in trying to provide that. But I think it's the behaviour and the culture which is, absolutely at the heart of this.
I think that's absolutely right. And one of the things with the reasons why Driven was quite a powerful process for us to kind of put forward was, I think quite often, and it'll be good to get your views on this, Melissa, diversity and inclusion are seen very much through the lens of recruitment and HR, and exclusively so. I know Rohan Shah from Reuben Sinclair did a really amazing talk with PRFest last week with Laura, and I urge everyone to look at that. And whilst recruitment is really important, I think there are elements in our industry where, unless we actually embrace this internally, we won't be able to put out a high quality of work that understands external audiences, unless we understand the lived experiences across. So what Driven strives to do is look at it across the organisation, from the output of our work to how we celebrate staff. The culture that you just mentioned, Alastair, I think is part of that. And to get that shift there, I think one of the and this is where, Melissa, you might have some insights, is I think regardless of the CIPR a forum, which is really great. The relaunch has been kind of really active, and things like the diversity network at the PRCA, which I'm involved in, or REEB. I think the block comes sometimes from a senior leadership position. So I think there's lots of great examples happening, but sometimes, you know, it's the senior leadership that needs to really take control of this. Melissa, when you're knocking on doors and when you're speaking to the industry and various organisations, are you having those conversations with senior leaders? And do you think that there needs to be more understanding and education at that level of our industry, or are you quite happy with the direction that leaders have taken?
I mean, it's a real mixed bag. I will speak to definitely senior leadership, CEOs of organisations, all the way cascading down. I think D&I absolutely needs to be a collaborative approach. Everybody has to be involved. So that is from the top down and from the bottom up. But yeah, I think each organisation needs to, you know, I think it was mentioned earlier on, look at themselves and work out what best works for them, because there isn't this, oh, if you do XYZ, then you have that magic formula and D&I will be set. Every organization, as I said, is so different, and there are, you know, dependent on the different strands of diversity that you're looking at, more might need to be done in one area than another. But I definitely think senior leadership buy-in is definitely very powerful. I think it does set the tone. Sometimes, you know, maybe if someone at, you know, at that sort of HR diversity level is trying to do something, but, you know, the buy-in is not there, it's not being taken seriously, then it will impact overall all of the work that's being done. So I just think when it can be done, collaborative across the whole organization, as many people are involved in a D&I strategy as possible, so that it's you know, so that it's very clear what the business is trying to do, because let's not forget, sometimes with all of these things that happen, non-minorities feel marginalized themselves. So as I said, just as many people as possible being involved helps with big impact, if you like.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of support for that in the chat. We will, all the questions being asked in the chat, by the way, on today's call, we will, if it's okay with the four of you, put to you afterwards, and maybe get some responses that are written up in the blog, because I think time is short today, but there's some amazing points being raised and questions being raised. I'm going to move on to reporting, and again we've touched on this in various kind of responses so far. Whilst there is an issue with, you know, around the codes of conduct and around training and learning, I think it's tempting sometimes to overlook some of the progress that has been made so far over the past few years. Now, I'm going to be pretty, you know, direct in saying that progress hasn't, you know, been fast enough by any stretch of the imagination, but it is being made. Now, both organisations, both the member organisations here, publish their reports annually on this. But what could be done to maybe on a micro level to bring out all the positive case studies and best practices that are being done, and at a macro level, what can be done to kind of really just measure and track how we are progressing as an industry year on year? Are we getting better, etc.? What could that look like? I'm gonna ask Jenni or Alastair to kind of kick us off with that. What do we need to do to really track properly in a meaningful way?
This is going to be a bit controversial now, I can tell. So I think tracking behaviour change is really hard, and I think we could get lost and stuck in a need for reporting on stuff for reporting's sake, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think if you've got a set of KPIs, you know, if you're doing the Driven Pledge and you've got your set of goals that are, you know, measurable, then you can link back to those, then I think that's great. But I think getting stuck in trying to measure something and prove something for the sake of it isn't helpful at all. And if what you're trying to do is change a behaviour, and you're trying to see a shift in the number of people that you're recruiting or your retention, or all of those things, then you can measure all of those, and that's, you know, that's all very achievable. But I'd worry that we tried to make up other stats and new things to make ourselves feel better by having a nice pretty dashboard that shows we've achieved something, because we can all make numbers say whatever we like, and I think there's a danger there that we could spend a lot of time doing that. So I think that from a reporting perspective, there's more we could do, I think, to break down the reality of the lack of diversity in our industry. I think we group people together, and this is from my own education that I've been doing over the last kind of few months. I think we kind of group people into places that I don't think is necessarily helpful, and I think that can lead organisations thinking that they're ticking a box because they've hired an Asian person, when actually your issue is around the number of black people that you've got. And I think that this whole process has shone quite a big light on that. So so I think that's kind of my 2 pennies on the whole kind of measurement and reporting. I think there's more we could do to make it more granular, but I wouldn't want to be doing it for the sake of doing it. I think you've got to be really specific about what you're trying to do, and that doesn't have to be loads of stuff. You know, have 5 things that you want to do. You know, you said already that it's taken us quite a long time to get even where we are today. I think if you left this webinar thinking, right, I've got 20 things I'm going to achieve in the next year, there's a little kind of probably reality check there. There's going to be some quick wins, but there's some long term. So, you know, have a 3 to 5 year strategy, have some good KPIs, and then, you know, work those through and put actions in place to support them, and, you know, just keep on tracking. And I think that's what we've got to do. None of us are here for the short haul. You know, we're in it to make long-term change. And I think we've got to keep going, but with a clear focus on what's going to make a difference, not trying to make a pretty dashboard.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that there is some room for some kind of consistency in terms of how we're reporting the broader progress. I think it's tempting to sign up to accreditation schemes, just kind of see this is how we, and I think overall that's a positive thing as long as everyone's being measured on the same criteria. I think my experience, I've worked with some big global brands in the last year, and they're actively now firing their agencies because they can't show a commitment to D&I. Now, whilst I absolutely embrace that, I think sometimes we don't know what success looks like.
Yes.
Tempting for, at the lower end, you know, the race to the bottom is how do we get something on our credits or our pitch decks to certify that. And I think it's tempting for a lot of organisations to just get the quickest solution to that. Francis, what's your take on reporting and showing the progress and shining a light on maybe some of the progress that's happening?
I disagree a little with Jenny. I mean, I agree that I've never been one for shiny dashboards or for reporting for its own sake. Definitely not. But I think the fact that we can say that both of our key parts of data that we've collected over 15 years that have gone show no change at all, it is a startling headline, and it gives us a piece of context. So I think if we could do something together with CIPR and PRCA about reporting on diversity, that would be great. Certainly from our perspective, we'll continue that tracking within our annual PR census. And we'll be able, by making the diversity module compulsory in CMS, we'll be able to give agencies and in-house teams data of their own to see how they're changing over time, and we'll be able to collate that to give us centralised data as well. I mean, you talk about some progress having been made, and there has been some. Okay, so the numbers haven't shifted. We've made a bit of progress in that we run the apprenticeship programme, the aim of which is to get people into our industry from a far more diverse background, people who don't have it. And we've been doing that for 7 or 8 years. But we still have 2 new employers signing up to that commitment. We were going, before all of this pandemic began, to launch our school outreach program, again with the aim of telling people who wouldn't think of PR as a career that it is for them, and of getting employers to commit to doing that as well. And that will hopefully, when the world gets back to a bit more like normal, that will restart, and we'll be challenging our members to engage with that. So we do have to report, but report in a sensible manner.
Right,
Brilliant.
and I would just like to add, I'm coming from obviously a slightly different perspective, but for the foundation, it is super important for us to report on, you know, where our candidates are, you know, our alumni in particular, as they progress in their career. And I think it's really, really important for us to shout about the successes. There has been progress made. Maybe it's been a bit slow, you know, maybe moved at a glacial pace, but we know that we have alumni who are doing very well. They are at director level. We don't have anyone at partner level yet, but you know, there is time, but it's important. And this year we produced our sort of very first official impact report, because actually if the foundation is not making impact through our programs and the things that we do, then why are we still doing that? So I'm pleased to say from the foundation's perspective that there are some good things happening, and you know, we do see our alumni being highlighted more through various organizations, you know, in PR Week articles, and I intend to definitely shout about them more and what they're doing, because there is some good success, and we need to as I said, just shout about that a bit more, otherwise the picture is too bleak.
I think, yeah, I completely agree. And I think when you talk about alumni, I have to kind of really give a shout out to Kuldeep Memi, who worked with Laura and I actually at the main PRFest event, you know, at the start of summer, and he was, you know, he inputted into the Driven network. Now, anyone who's heard Kuldeep speak, and Kuldeep is just one of your stories, I think you absolutely, just hearing those words and hearing his just amazing presentation, it shows the importance of what Taylor Bennett Foundation is doing, but more importantly, it kind of shines a light on the importance of kind of mentoring and volunteering, which is something I'd kind of like to explore with you a bit further, Melissa. You know, I think it's being implemented now by a lot more organisations. I think mainly due to the work that you and other organisations are doing and showing the impact of it. But you now have got the eyes and ears of, you know, the attendees on this chat, but also everyone's going to view this on YouTube afterwards. And more importantly, you've got Francis, Jenny, and Alastair as well. What would you say to them in terms of what the industry needs to do to support more work in volunteering and mentoring specifically?
I mean, essentially, to literally keep on doing what they do. We are supported by the CIPR and the PRCA with our candidates across pretty much all of our programs, which is fantastic. And I don't think I've mentioned it, but there are 2 full-time staff at the foundation and a couple of freelancers. And when you hear about all of the things that we do, basically it's not possible without the support of our network. So the people that sign up to mentor, to you know, volunteer, to deliver masterclasses, to take on interns, it impacts us in a positive way so much. We recruit for our mentoring program a couple of times a year, in spring and autumn. We've just closed for our autumn applications, and we had 60 applications from mentees, and that's, you know, undergraduates through to alumni who have been working a few years into their career. And I think we had around 34 mentor applications. So it's important and it's powerful, and the objective doesn't always have to be, you know, finding a job, finding employment. When, for example, our mentors sign up, they tend to be looking to raise their knowledge and their insight about the industry, because it's not always very clear to understand what happens here and the different, you know, the breadth of opportunities that are available. They're looking to expand their professional networks, because lots of our young people do not know people that work here, you know, from their families to their friends to their peers. So mentors are able to introduce them, you know, to colleagues, bring them along to events, that sort of thing. And then I guess the final objective for our mentees, which is again very, very useful, is the what next. So if someone is mentoring an undergraduate or a student, they might help them to source some paid work experience or a paid internship, because we don't facilitate anything less. If they are a graduate, then the objective, yes, might be to help them to secure a role. Or for our alumni who are working maybe sort of 2 to 3 years into their career and they're looking to progress within their companies or to move sector, then the mentors do that. So for me, volunteering, mentoring, supporting the foundation, doesn't have to cost anything. Very, very helpful. So yeah, just more people on board. I think I'm just quickly recapping to December last year when I did an overview. We were supported by 130 plus different agencies, in-house comms teams and individuals who supported our programs. So that's why we can achieve what we do.
That's brilliant. I think by next year, let's double that, triple that.
Oh, well, let's hope so.
At least, very least. CIPR, any comments to add on the issue of mentoring and volunteering in terms of what you're specifically doing or asking your members to do?
Well, you know, we are almost entirely powered by volunteers. We have a small staff, and most of the legwork is done by our volunteers. So it's absolutely critical for us to move decisively in any direction that our volunteers make that happen. So to pick up on something that Melissa said, something that I would encourage everybody to do is to expand their own network. I mean, we all only know who we know. You know, when opportunities for work come up, we phone up people who we've already worked with before, you know, and it all has to be done. You know, you don't want to put work in the hands of somebody you don't know or don't trust or doesn't come recommended. So there's all kinds of ways in which the informal network of the PR sector is both, you know, an absolutely great thing, but it can also be very excluding. So if there's nothing else you can do, you know, if you're a sole practitioner, if you're not an employer, one thing you could do that's not going to cost you anything is, you know, try to expand your network, try to include some people who are different to you, and, you know, look for ways of involving them, and, you know, just pull everyone together more effectively and more closely. And I absolutely encourage our volunteers to take a look at the Driven Pledge and to think about other serious things they can do to help drive that culture change that we talked about earlier.
Brilliant. Francis, very briefly from you, any kind of more to that?
Briefly from us, make people aware of our fast track mentoring program, freely available to practitioners, whether they're members of ours or not, globally.
Fantastic. We are approaching the end of our hour. That's gone by very, very quickly. We did have some further questions from the community, but what we'll do is if you're all okay with this, we'll collate them and put them to you so you can then give your considered responses, and we'll have those on the PRFest blog. But just before you all go, I think just in one sentence or less, are you optimistic or pessimistic, and what's your outlook on D&I for the next year? Just very briefly, Francis.
I am optimistic. I'm a lot more optimistic than I was a couple of months ago, and I think there's a real will within the industry to change. Brilliant.
Judging by the comments that we've had in the chat, I think everyone is quite charged up by this discussion. Jenni, Alastair, what are your kind of insights into the next year? Happy, sad, frustrated? I'm
always frustrated because I think we have the same conversations, you know, every year for 15 years on lots of different topics. But like Francis, I am much more positive. I think it feels like this is a real opportunity for real change, and I will always be an optimist, however frustrated I may get. So yeah, very hopeful.
I like your style, Jenni. And Melissa, what's your standpoint right now, looking forward?
I am optimistic. So I'm in the Jenni camp. I'm generally an optimistic kind of person, definitely a glass half full person. I have been having some very encouraging conversations with people old and new over the last few months, which is brilliant. And I'm very excited about 2021 for the foundation. And, you know, the more we sort of progress, we'll then share that. But I'm optimistic. I'm definitely optimistic.
Great.
In with me in a year's time and see how I still feel.
We'll definitely check in. Alastair, what's your passing word on?
I'm always less frustrated than Jenni and less optimistic.
It's a good balance.
I think a question for me is where's next year's business going to come from, and where's your business going to be in 5 years' time? And, you know, lots of our members are based in, you know, Norwich or somewhere. They've got 4 or 5 local businesses working in organic farming or local inbound tourism. They've got up to now, they've had a stable client base. So all the stuff about diversity has seemed perhaps pretty remote or not relevant to them. So where are those clients now? And how are you going to keep your people busy? and how, you know, the limitations on your own experience and your own knowledge and your own network that didn't really seem to matter that much 18 months ago, maybe they matter a lot more now. So I'm optimistic because I think people are really going to have to take a long, hard look at their businesses and set themselves some challenges they've been able to ignore for quite a long time.
Well, I think that's a really good point to end this part of the discussion on. I'm going to thank you all for everything that you've done today. Thank you for being available. I'm going to hand back to you, Laura, just to close things off. So yeah.
Thank you, and thank you as well, Rax. Thanks to everyone who has come on today to be part of the discussion, but not just be part of the discussion, actually to take something away from this. And I think that's definitely one of my asks. You need to commit to doing something as individuals, as business owners, as consultants, as agency owners, organisation team leads. Everyone needs to take something away, and whether you use the pledge for yourself or you're part of something else, then I really think that to have the change, we need to be the change. And we've talked about culture change, we've talked about leadership, and leadership is the thing that is so crucial because we need to be setting these good examples and sharing best practice. We need to be encouraging not just ourselves but our colleagues as well to take action. So if you're going to take the pledge, I have dropped the link. It's now live into the chat box. I think we've covered off everything from recruitment and training and mentoring to calling out, reporting, expanding your network is a sure but very quick way. There's many people on here that have put their handles into the chat box as well, so go and follow up with them. The Driven Pledge is free, it's accessible, and I do expect people to hopefully be downloading and keeping the conversation going. But thank you very much to everybody who's taken part, and I do hope that we can come back in maybe 6 months' time to revisit what we've said we would do, what we've done, and see how we can help each other further. But for all the other questions we've not managed to get round to, as Rax said, I'll be going around to everyone to try and get the responses from the panellists, and we'll get some blogs up on the site as soon as possible. But thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.